there's a lot of really good stuff out there, like people talking about this for weight loss. But I have seen this like backlash against GLP-1s, or like this judgment, like, oh, you're cheating or something. That's not
Yeah.
what this is. Medication is not cheating. The way I think about medication is it's bridging the gap between what you can do with your lifestyle and whatever genetics or whatever environmental stuff that you can't control. Because the reality is that health is not all within our control. We kind of like to think it is, and there is a
Yeah.
lot that we can do. You can do more physical activity. You can choose different foods. You can sleep better. And then there's a lot of stuff that you cannot control. You cannot control your exposure to pollutants in the environment. You cannot control your genes that you were born with. And that is where medications can really help. So if you feel like you've been doing all this stuff, you're still not getting the results that you want, whether it's looking at your cardiovascular risk or your diabetes, or even weight. I think weight is a little bit tricky in this still. Um, maybe you do need to look at a medication, and a GLP-1 has a lot of benefits.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast.
But I am really excited to have you back because, as I was telling you, for like the last 3 or 4 months, I've been nerding out on all the GLP-1 research because at first I was like, oh God, another weight loss drug. This is dumb. I was put on
Mm-hmm.
phentermine when I was 10.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so my
Mm-hmm.
instant reaction was to roll my eyes and like put it over here. And also because of the work that I do, I'm very weight neutral, focused on habits and behaviors, like we talked about last
Mm-hmm.
time. And one thing that I heard on one of my favorite podcasts called Mind Pump, it's like three trainers that get together and they just talk about lifting weights and stuff like that. One thing they said was that these are going to be around for a while, so
Oh, yeah.
you're probably going to have clients that are on them. You should learn about them. And
Mm-hmm.
um, so that's what started my rabbit hole of looking at studies and listening to podcasts and stuff. And I've just been like, holy crap, like paradigm shattered, that kind
Yeah.
of. So anyway, all that said, um, the first thing I want to ask you is what is a GLP-1?
That is a great question. Technically, it's a GLP-1 agonist is the medication, because what the medication is doing is actually signaling your body to make more of this GLP-1 hormone, or a GLP-1 agonist. And so it looks like this native hormone in your body, which is called GLP-1, stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It's a hormone that's released when you eat food. So, and that, and because it's released when you eat food, it has several different um, things to do in the body. So one of the things that GLP-1 does is it's a satiety hormone. It actually signals your brain that you are full and satisfied after a meal. The other thing that it does is it signals your pancreas that it's about to the body is about to experience a spike in blood sugar. And so it tells the pancreas kind of a heads up, you need to release more insulin. So my experience, my name is Ann Kent. I'm a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes care and education specialist. So I worked in a diabetes clinic and an endocrinology clinic for about 10 years. And many of those years, we used these GLP-1 medications as a primary treatment for type 2 diabetes. There was a secondary effect of weight loss, but the primary reason we were using them was because of the blood sugar lowering effect. And then about 5 years ago is when these medications were released for weight loss purposes. And basically, it's the same medication, just used at a higher dose. So in the clinic for diabetes, I was using like a medication like Victoza. Now at a higher dose, it's called Ozempic, which is what's one of them that's been very popular.
And then there's also Wegovy, right, in the semaglutide category.
Yeah, there's also a couple different ones, and they have a couple of different mechanisms of action. So we're talking about GLP-1, which is glucagon-like peptide 1.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is a GIP. Gosh, I'm going to have to like even look up what that means, because that is new. And so that's the tirzepatide, and they have actually like a dual mode of action. So that's why you see some different potencies or some more significant effects with some of the medication, because they actually are targeting two different mechanisms in the body.
Mm. And so back to the research and the data on all of this, I've been looking at studies on GLP-1s and depression, GLP-1s and Alzheimer's, GLP-1s and skin conditions, GLP-1s and PCOS. What's another one? Sleep apnea. And it seems to be like this I don't want to say it's a miracle drug, because it's a peptide. It's not really a drug. It's just that you have to have it prescribed, right? Is that correct? I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of working with your body in a natural way. So, and that's what a lot of medications do. Some of them, they tell your body to produce more of a hormone that you're lacking, and this is one of them that's doing that. So our bodies naturally produce glucagon-like peptide, and you can actually impact the amount that you produce by what you eat. For example, certain dietary patterns, we see people increase the amount of GLP-1 they make naturally versus and that's primarily with a more whole foods, whole plant, higher fiber diet versus like a diet that's really high in these ultra processed refined grains and sugar. Not that you can't have those in there, but when we're talking about like the bigger picture, part of the reason for that is dietary patterns that are higher in fiber take longer to digest. And GLP-1 is produced in your gut. And so the longer food is in your gut, the more GLP-1 you're naturally producing. But foods that are super easy to digest, like soda or sugar or, refined carbohydrates, they're digested really easily. So the transit time in the gut is shorter, and you don't have as much of that native hormone produced. So I guess I kind of want to separate that too, because I think that there is some myth that like, there are some things that you can actually do naturally. So if you would prefer not to do these medications, but you're like, man, I wish I had some of those benefits, actually changing what you eat can have a result, can result in that.
I love that.
And it's interesting too. I mean, the things that you were just mentioning, gosh, the body has systems, and all these systems are interconnected. Hormones do not work independently. They work interdependently with a bunch of other things. And so a lot of times, if you improve one thing, you'll see other things improve as well. I guess I'd be curious to dig into some of those research studies and learn, is it truly just the GLP-1 that's affecting this? Or is that, sleep apnea improves, and so blood sugar improves, and that is what is reducing the risk of Alzheimer's disease? Because we know things like Alzheimer's disease are very impacted by blood sugar control. You have uncontrolled diabetes for a long time, your risk of dementia and cognitive decline goes up. So it's such a, man, it's a good and a bad thing, I guess. I like to think of it as a good thing that when you improve one thing, you actually improve a lot of other things. And I think that's one of the benefits of GLP-1 is that it can sort of like open the door for someone to give them a little bit of success that maybe they haven't seen before. And then all these other things start falling in line when it's done correctly. There's definitely a right and wrong way to do GLP-1s.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I've found, like in everything that I've been reading, and for the listeners, I've actually, what's it called? I've compacted. I made a PDF of all the research that I've been doing with links to the actual studies and the podcast episodes. But what I've been finding is like all the stuff that at least I was talking about, there's a ton more research out there. I think they've been researching this now for like 20 years, right? It's not new. Right. But all of these other things are happening independent of weight loss, which is also fascinating to me, because that's what everyone's focusing on right now is weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. And it's like, I'm really surprised that they're not focusing on all the other things. Which kind of makes me like, we were talking about this. It's such a new thing for me to be like gung ho about these GLP-1s because of all the focus on the weight loss, but I am still a weight neutral personal trainer coach. Like, go do the behaviors and habits, and maybe you'll lose weight, maybe you won't, but you'll be healthy because of the behaviors and habits. So I hope that all made sense. So right now I'm still just in this place where it's blowing my mind.
Yeah, to your point about these GLP-1s having other benefits, we're seeing them prescribed by cardiologists, for example, because of those cardiovascular benefits. And so, but they can have so many body systems are affected by this that it's good to have a medical team when you're thinking about these sometimes, especially if you do have any of these conditions, like if you have diabetes or if you have heart disease. Definitely something to talk with your doctor about, especially for you personally. There are studies, and that's really important. And then there's also you as a person and your specific risk factors. And you really want to talk with a medical professional who's not only aware of the research, but also knows you and can help you talk through what are the risks and benefits for you personally with some of these.
Yeah, it is a personal thing. Like just like with personal training, everything is like personal. And so that I kind of want to open the conversation about microdosing. There's a doctor I've been following, Dr. Tina Moore, and she talks about how like these medications are wildly like overdosed in people, which is what is actually caught. She says once you're symptomatic, you're taking too much of it. And she talks about microdosing it, like even people who don't need to lose weight and they want to take it for like the other things we were talking about, just like tiny little droplets to have it work with your body. Um, yeah. What are your thoughts on microdosing?
Well, there's not a ton of data on something like that. It is off-label
Right.
use. So I guess I want to put a disclaimer that that's not been tested or approved by the FDA. So you have to be a little bit tricky. And that would be at the discretion of a physician that you're working with.
Yeah.
We did some of that when in clinic, when I worked with patients, and it was mostly related to symptoms. So if we were seeing, some people, just like all medications, some people are very sensitive to this and other people can tolerate a higher dose, and it's very individualized. So when you start a GLP-1, typically you start at a low dose and then you titrate up to your optimal dose. And that can vary. Some people need the full dose that's on the label. Some people need half of it. And some people, typically if you're unfamiliar with these, there's different ways that you can take these, but a lot of times they're in a pen form. You can take there's weekly injections and there's daily injections. Some of the daily injections, it's in a pen similar to an insulin pen, and you twist a dial to dial up your dose, literally. And so there's clicks in between the doses, is what we called them. So instead of going from 0.6 to 1.2, you would go from 0.6 to 0.6 plus one click for a day or two, and just really gradually titrate up to find your specific dose. Now that is an off-label use again, and so I would only do that under the direction of a physician. But I would agree that it is probably likely that a lot of people are taking too much of these medications. If you, some of the red flags that I watch out for are, is your appetite gone completely? If you are not hungry and you are not eating, you need to back off the dose. That is dangerous. Your body is still starving to death, even though you don't feel physically hungry. You actually do have a lot of muscle wasting, which is probably the primary concern with GLP-1s, is the amount of muscle loss that you lose when you lose weight. But your body still needs nutrients to function. You can't build your hormones if you don't have any fat or protein. Those are literally the building blocks for your body. So that's the biggest red flag. The other red flag, of course, is these GI side effects. So sometimes it can be a total reduction in appetite, so you're not eating anything. But the other thing can be, I can't keep any food down, or I'm having horrible diarrhea or some other, gastrointestinal symptom. If those symptoms are intolerable, you definitely need to decrease your dose or find a different medication. And then of course, there's also some of these like black box warning that they've seen some this is mostly an animal model, so not a huge concern. But if you have a history of thyroid cancer or any thyroid issues, that would also be something you would want to discuss with your doctor before starting one of these medications. Did that answer the question about too much, though? I think my concern as a dietitian is always, are you being fed? Are you getting enough nutrition?
Yes.
And we live in such a world of diet culture that for some reason we've equated health and nutrition with eating less. And that is kind of crazy when you think about what nutrition is for. Nutrition is literally designed to fuel us and build us. So if you are not eating, it's like asking you to stop breathing for an hour.
Yeah.
It's that insane because the calories are really that important to your body. So, and I guess I bring this up too, because I don't think that this is an uncommon story. I hear this often in not just my clients, but I've seen this in, Facebook groups and like moms groups that I'm in who are talking about this. What's your experience? And it can range widely because of people's unique experiences and side effects. But if you think something might be wrong, you need to talk to a doctor because you're probably right.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about, so I think I probably told you this last time, but my work is helping people heal their relationships with food, exercise, their body, and themselves.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know your thoughts. Like, my guess would be that somebody taking these medications would be more successful if they have already started the healing process to food and exercise in their bodies, rather than somebody who's just like, I need to take this medication, and the only reason I'm going to take it is to get that number on the scale down. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Feel like there would be a benefit to somebody who's been doing the work for a while, healing their relationship to food, so that if they do go on this medication, they have a better sense of, like, maybe I'll track to make sure I'm eating enough, or maybe I'll track to make sure I'm getting enough protein. And so some of the things I've heard is that we have to prioritize protein and strength training to help with the muscle loss that you were talking about earlier. So what are your thoughts on that? Just healing, or at least start. I don't think we're ever completely healed, but like starting the healing process before going on it.
Honestly, this is one of those, like, use with extreme caution. I think both because of the way the medication works and also because of our cultural experience with it right now, because it's being promoted so much as a weight loss medication. And if you take a high dose, you can lose weight really fast in a way that's actually not healthy and not good long term. This is where I would be sitting down with an individual and really going through their history, not only their medical history, their experience with dieting, psychologically, how are they feeling about this? Intuitive eating can be really challenging when you're on these medications if your appetite is so reduced that you don't feel hungry. And so especially if I'm working with someone on, feelings of hunger and fullness, this medication can throw a whole different wrench in that. So you can't necessarily trust your hunger and fullness cues. You might not feel hungry, and that is not an excuse to not eat. You can go all day. I mean, I've heard this. I heard a client the other day was like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. Yesterday I ate like an avocado and some crackers. And I was like, for breakfast, you ate that? No, that was like the entire day. And if I told you that, like, here's where fat phobia, I think, is so incredibly dangerous. If that person is in a larger body, nobody blinks when they tell you that. But if that person were in a person who looked very, very thin, emaciated, that would be a red flag for anorexia. But the same thing is happening in both of those bodies, that they're being severely undernourished. So I think that is one of the most dangerous things about these medications when they're not handled correctly, or you don't have enough medical oversight, is that somebody can be truly starving to death and nobody notices because they're in a larger body. And what a disservice to people that we're doing. So I think it really has to be taken with caution if you are healing your relationship with food. On one hand, for those patients that my experience, I will say, was largely positive with the GLP-1s when I was working with them and with my patients with diabetes, because it was like we had this medication all of a sudden that was going to work with them instead of feeling like they were just constantly working uphill. Like we didn't just have more insulin, which tends to be more weight gain related. It tends to make you hungrier. It's a growth hormone. All of a sudden we had the opposite. We had this hormone that could actually help balance and help reset some of those cravings and hunger. So for those patients, it was so empowering that they were finally able to overcome some of the cravings and feel more in control. And actually, we could work more with intuitive eating because they didn't have all that food noise, and we could start adding in healthier things. So I think it really depends on the approach, and it depends on the person and where they're at. Sometimes it can be really helpful, and sometimes it can be really harmful and take you a big step back.
I'm glad you brought up food noise. Let's dig into that a little bit deeper.
Yes.
For the listeners, never heard that before, which they probably have because it's my podcast, but what is food noise?
Food noise is there's constant thoughts about food that, you're sitting at your desk and you're trying to get some work done and you're like, man, I want some chips. Ooh, some chocolate sounds good. Oh man, what am I going to have for dinner? Any of those thoughts that you're having. There can be many reasons that people have food noise. As an intuitive eating dietitian, I would say one of the number one reasons people have food noise is because they're hungry, because they haven't fueled appropriately. So if you are taking a GLP-1 to suppress food noise when you're actually hungry, I would argue that we're actually going in the wrong direction. We're moving farther away from intuitive eating, and there's other work that needs to be done. So I guess I want to first say that you can cure food noise. You can work through that in other ways. And this is where getting to the root cause of the problem and identifying your real need is so important. It may be that a GLP-1 is helpful. If your body naturally doesn't produce as much GLP-1, then maybe supplementing that can be a really effective tool. But you could try some of these alternatives first, like, are we addressing your hunger and fullness correctly during the day? Are you getting enough protein just generally in your eating pattern? Are we skipping breakfast all the time? And so like by 3 o'clock, you're in such a calorie deficit that you're craving everything because you're underfueled. So yeah, number one, are you eating enough? But then number two, if you are eating enough and especially if you've been working with a dietitian or somebody trained in intuitive eating and you're to a point where you're like, yeah, something else needs to give. I've got these other health risk factors. I have heart disease in my family. I've had high cholesterol. You've had these other health risk factors. Maybe then would be an appropriate time to think, could adding a GLP-1 be beneficial? Because now we're treating the whole person. We're looking at all of your risk factors. Food noise is one of them, but we've addressed that in other ways. And it's still there, and you have these other reasons. So I'm not opposed to someone using GLP-1 to reduce food noise, for example, or even for weight loss. I'm going to be really careful with that because of the intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is not designed for weight loss,
right?
But there can be health benefits to it when done appropriately. So you just have to look at the whole picture, which I think is really being lost in the diet culture and the social media world of GLP-1s. So I appreciate you so much for talking about this and digging into the nuance a little bit. It's a really important topic.
Yeah, because there's also a lot of like negative things being said about and like if you hear all the noise from social media in the negative sense and you look at the actual research, it doesn't match.
Right.
So that's why I always like highly encourage people, like even if I'm telling you I did this research and this is what it says, go look at it yourself, because we could look at it completely different and see completely different things.
And I might even add an extra layer on top of that is go talk to an expert who knows about this and knows you. Because I think sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I don't have time to look at a ton of research studies, which would be great. But they're hard to interpret too. Sometimes it's really difficult to understand. Like I have been reading research articles for this book that I'm writing, and I'm like, oh, I forgot how hard it is to read research articles. These are confusing. So, having somebody who can interpret the information and help you apply it to your life is really important. to say, like, again, differentiating that, like, have we done the work with reducing food noise? What are your other health risks for you personally? And could this be beneficial or not?
Yeah. Good stuff. Is there anything else that you want to say about the GLP-1s before we wrap it up?
I think you just brought up a good point about, there's a lot of really good stuff out there, like people talking about this for weight loss. But I have seen this like backlash against GLP-1s, or like this judgment, like, oh, you're cheating or something. That's not
Yeah.
what this is. Medication is not cheating. The way I think about medication is it's bridging the gap between what you can do with your lifestyle and whatever genetics or whatever environmental stuff that you can't control. Because the reality is that health is not all within our control. We kind of like to think it is. And there is a lot that we can do. You can, do more physical activity. You can choose different foods. You can sleep better. And then there's a lot of stuff that you cannot control. You cannot control your exposure to pollutants in the environment. You cannot control your genes that you were born with. And that is where medications can really help. So if you feel like you've been doing all this stuff, you're still not getting the results that you want, whether it's looking at your cardiovascular risk or your diabetes, or even weight. I think weight is a little bit tricky in this still. Maybe you do need to look at a medication, and a GLP-1 has a lot of benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like some people have said, oh, that's the easy way out. I'm like, it's a
Sure
tool.
isn't.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool in the toolbox that you can add it to your regular exercise, your whatever it is you're eating, how you're nourishing your body. Going back to all the other things I talk about,
Right.
sleep, what do your surroundings look like? How is that affecting your mental health? Are you healing? It's like, it's just one tool. So,
and the other thing to know about GLP-1s too, and probably your listeners know, but they are designed as a lifelong medication. That was my only experience. When you live in the world of diabetes, diabetes is type 2 is a progressive disease. It's a progressive chronic disease, meaning that it basically goes in one direction. It's very hard to heal your pancreas once it's kind of burned out. And so when you go on a medication, it's unlikely, we don't expect you to go off. We're adding medications. And GLP-1s are that way too. They're designed to be a lifelong medication. So there's very little research as to what happens if you decide to go off them, or if you have to go off them for some reason. I would always just put that little asterisk out there too. If you don't want to be on a medication for the rest of your life, then add that to the list of things to consider. Obviously, people go off of this medication. Some people have good experiences and some people don't. I don't know that we have enough long-term data. We really don't have, because again, these were not designed to be medications that you took for a while and then went off them. So there's not a lot of research out there.
Yeah, they were designed specifically for diabetes, right? And then now the recent stuff is just focusing weight loss. So
yeah, I mean, it's like at these low doses, wow, you can like really improve blood sugar, and holy cow, can you? It's really amazing. And then turns out, like, the more you take, the more severe the side effects are, which are mostly weight loss side effects.
Yeah, and just like it feels like anytime there's something that's being treated that has weight loss as a side effect, people will like keto. Keto was for epilepsy, right? Epileptic children. Yeah.
Good job. Yeah, not many people know that.
I mean, I'm kind of a nerd, but anyway, like,
that's fantastic.
But they're like, oh, side effect, weight loss. Let's grab it. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because like you said earlier, people think weight loss is health.
Right.
And
unfortunately it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it is how that weight loss happens. And the way I think about weight a lot is that it's a side effect of whatever you're doing. So it's sort of like a symptom. If weight is too high, sometimes it means that something is out of balance. Maybe we do need to adjust the balance of the types of food, or how much you're sleeping, or all of these things. If your weight is dropping a lot, now we need to like make sure that you're getting enough. So it's kind of this like secondary measure is how I think about it. And I also want to remind people that it's probably not your ultimate goal either. the diet industry likes to convince you that weight equals happiness, but there are not a lot of people who are super thin with eating disorders who are very happy. It's actually that elusive weight. If that is the goal of happiness, it's another of those, we got to dig a little bit deeper and probably have a good guide alongside you to help ask some tough questions about what it is you really want and why weight feels so significant. Is it truly so that you'll be healthier? Because if that is the reason, there are a lot of ways to go about health. You don't actually always have to lose weight to be healthier. Many times actually you don't. Let me just say that. Yeah. There are a lot of ways to be healthier without losing a single pound.
Yeah. And just a piece of my own story. When I was at my thinnest, I still hated my body. Right. And it's like we have this mindset of once I get to XYZ weight, I will be happy, like you were saying. And it's like my goal with people is to get them to this, I am happy and satisfied as I am. And therefore, I'm going to go on a health adventure journey because I love myself, not because I hate how I look. And it's such a huge mindset difference. And it's like two completely different journeys coming from two different places. So
I totally agree. And honestly, the GLP-1 conversation can fit exactly in that model that you just said. In one of those instances, when you're working from the inside out, this can be a tool to your healing. But if you're just doing this as another thing to kind of punish yourself, it's not actually probably going to lead you to the result that you want.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate this conversation. This was the first one.
Thank you. I am so, it's such a hot topic right now.
It is. Yeah. And I hear so much negativity about it. And like I said, when you look at what it's actually doing, it's just blowing my mind. And so I had to talk about it. But I think even though we did this last time, I'm going to ask you what I ask everyone at the end of every episode. And that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
Just generally, or about GLP-1s? Which would you prefer?
Let's say about GLP-1s.
I would say, remember that you are an individual and that you deserve individual care. And that may help you from getting swept up in either the hype about these or the negativity. And if it is right for you, then that's fantastic. And if it's not right for you, then that's okay too. But, and I really encourage you to find a trusted health professional who can help you navigate that. This is one of those things that I don't think that you should do alone, and I don't think that you should do with someone who's not qualified to talk about these things. There's a lot of celebrities and a lot of, popular people talking about them who don't truly have the science background. So find a health provider who works with them, who has experience with them, not just prescribing them a lot, but who actually follows up with you and, measures your body composition, meets with you every month, asks how much you're eating, asks if you're eating enough protein, asks those questions to make sure that they're going to be in the trenches with you, not just looking at the number on the scale.
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful Beasts and Kent signing off. Until next time.